Well, good afternoon, everyone. It is, I just got a text from a customer. You guys like my flowing locks? Gorgeous, aren't they? I have been blessed with this monstrosity of hair by my family. We all have this weird curly shit that our hair does, and it just doesn't ever want to do what you want it to. Doesn't. It goes bald in places, then it gets long and curly in others. But at any rate, that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about these stones. I finally think that I've used them enough that I can talk about these Venev Diamond stones, and we're going to talk about something else. We're going to talk about why you're wrong about my other stones. Not y'all, not everyone. One person in particular. I think that they're going to know who they are. I had a conversation with a guy this morning, and it went from the guy, we were just kind of talking, and it went from a text to a FaceTime, and then went to a basically asking me a question, and then, you know, saying that he kind of didn't know, and then basically expounding upon saying he didn't know, and then kind of arguing with me about something. And I'm not trying to say I'm an expert, but definitely I'm a professional. I get a business card that says I know what I'm doing about this. So we'll talk about why you're wrong about what you were saying. So we'll get into these Venev Diamond stones. So these stones were a gift. And you remember I was talking about some stuff, and the guy that gave them to me said he didn't want me to call him out, but I'm doing it anyway. Dwayne Smotherman, who's been on live feeds and stuff like that a bunch of times. It's chilly and cold out here. Chilly and windy. Sent me these Venev Diamond stones that he got for me on Gritomatic when he got some for himself. He's the same gentleman that bought me my Skaha 2 that got stolen in transit, which is being replaced by a guy named Yakov in Croatia. He is replacing that, and so to pay things forward, I don't have the money to replace the Fox Tur that was stolen from Aaron. I'm replacing Aaron's Best Tech Swordfish. So we're going to talk about something about that at the end. But at any rate, I just kind of wanted to talk about these stones. They were a gift, and I kind of like these stones. These Venev stones are what are called a bonded diamond stone. Some people call them centered stones. They are a lot like some of the other stones that I use. They are kind of a resin-bound stone, which is what the Chaucera stones are. So the Chaucera stones are a resin-bound stone. There's an abrasive in a resin matrix that is held in there at different grits. But instead of just using like a limestone or a sapphire or whatever they're using in this one, they use diamonds. And the cool thing about these is these ones, you get 1 grit per stone. With these ones, you get 2. So this is a 100 and a 240. So this is the 100 on that side, and it's 240. And so sometimes these are kind of hard to read. Let me get them in close. You can see that's kind of hard to read. So the 100 side, it's got an arrow, and the 240 side, it's got an arrow. But the thing is, if you can find your coarse stone and you figure out which one it is, it's really easy to remember. The darker side of the stone is always the coarser side. So you have a blacker side, like a darker side, and then like a copper side. Now these stones do not wear near as easily as some of the other resin-bound stones that I've ever had. And they seem to hold up fairly well. I'm drinking whiskey because I know what I'm about to talk about here in a little bit, because that whole interaction, it was unpleasant. So these stones really, really, really cut well. There's going to be a caveat to that in a minute. They cut really well, but they're not. Let me make the caveat. They cut really well, but if you're used to a DMT, how aggressive and coarse and oh my God, 2-3 strokes, that's not what you're going to get out of a Venev Diamond stone, out of these bonded diamond stones. You're going to get something a little different. These cut a little different. They're not as aggressive. They cut real consistent, and they seem like they're cutting fairly slow. They cut real evenly, real consistently, and I'm not going to say they cut slow, because they really don't. They might feel like it. You gotta be careful. You're like, this thing doesn't feel like it's cutting. And then you realize you're seeing all this black stuff build up on your stone. You're like, flip your stone, and you're like, wow, I've really taken off a good bit of material. So they cut not quite, I'm not going to say, they're not as aggressive. Like, I wouldn't want to try and reprofile on this 100 grit. I wouldn't want to try and, I still keep this around for heavy reprofiling. I still have a 120 grit. I have some really heavy grit stones for reprofiling. But I mean, if you're sharpening some heavy duty hard steel, 20 CV, S125V, things like that, S110V, you know, S30V even, those would be things that I would be looking at, you know, they would be a good investment, and they don't seem to dish out as bad. Now, the caveat to that, I just sharpened this morning as well, because I did stonewash my gent in S35VN. Well, you guys all know S35VN is nowhere near as hard as some of the other steels that I sharpen on a regular basis. I will tell you, these Venev Diamond stones, they do not like or do as well on a softer steel. They have a tendency to kind of load up, slick up, and then you got to clean them up a little bit. Now, the nice thing about these stones is, as opposed to a DMT plate, once those diamonds are gone, these diamonds come rip loose. Now, I've used this for almost 2 years now. It's still really coarse. It still does a really good job reprofiling and things like that. But once those diamonds rip loose, they're gone. These, you can put these down on a plate and you can flatten them back out. And then you can expose fresh new diamond. And you can do it with things that you already have for your other whetstones. Now, I will say, be careful, because I think I need to buy a new one. I used this, and I was not paying much, and I have formed now a new trough. I can't use this on my stone unless I flatten this. And you can do it. There's ways to do it. I could just take this to the shop and put this on a 220 grit belt and flatten this right out real quick. It's not that big a deal. But they're easier to maintain, because there's a maintenance. You can do maintenance on them. This, once it's worn out, it's worn out. These, use it, they will dish out. They'll get spots. They'll start to slick up. The diamonds will smooth out. But as you use one of these, you expose new points and new things like that, because all you're removing, a lot of times what you're removing is that resin that's bonding these. Like I said, and they're fairly thick. There's a good bit of material. It doesn't seem like it, but that's a good bit of material, and I've been using these for a while, and I flattened them a few times. So they're pretty good. I'm liking them for harder steels. Like I said, I still use, like I was doing a good bit of softer steels today, which I still consider, for what a lot of people will argue with me, S90V. I do not feel that S90V is as hard a steel as some of the others. S90V, like some of these other stones, which is where I'm going to get into the second part of the video. Okay, now, I had a conversation with a gentleman this morning, and we were talking about some of the stones I use. Now, these are, I will say, these are my aluminum oxide stones, because like I said, I was sharpening this, my gent. I needed to touch my gent up. I just finished sharpening some stuff for customers. I sharpened a hinderer in S35VN. I used these. I sharpened a Norseman, took it all the way to 10,000 grit. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. I haven't taken one to 10,000 grit in a long time. You gotta be really careful. My stones now I'm gonna have to reflatten my stones. I am gonna charge extra because I had to use corners of my stones, my higher grit stones. And, but I was talking with a guy about stones, and he was saying, well, you know, this and that and this and that. And I said, well, he's like, well, those stones break down, and that's why they're ineffectual against these steels. I was like, no. And by the time I was even trying to explain it, the guy basically shut off the FaceTime in a huff. So Now I want you guys to look at what's on this stone. So this is my 400 grit stone. And what you have here is, that's not metal. What happens is, as that stone breaks down, some of that is metal. I'm not gonna lie, some of it is. The way water stones work. I'm gonna do this. We're going to break this down quickly because it's already a 10-minute video. I'm gonna do this a one-shot video, no editing. The way water stones work, as opposed to Arkansas stones and some of the oil stones or diamond stones and things like that, as that stone breaks down, it actually cuts better. There's a reason that you don't see me washing these stones off once I set them in there. I set them in gently just to keep them wet. That's a slurry that forms. Chaucera stones do the same thing. That bit of gunk that's on that stone is what you want. So as that stone starts to, and I'm done sharpening for the day, so those are going to get, usually what they do is they sit here on my table and I just add water to that slurry and I go right back to it with the next knife. And I set them aside from each other, keep them separate, and I maintain that slurry on them, and I go stage by stage, next knife, stage by stage, next knife, and I let that slurry continue to stay on it because they stay wet, especially on a damp day like today. That slurry does your work. The stone by itself isn't going to cut all that well. As that slurry builds, those little particles of abrasive, they get in there and they rub in between, and oh my goodness, they do all the work. And so these people that say, oh, that stone's too soft, it's just coming apart, it won't work, it can't work, it won't work. People have been using these type of stones for generations and generations and generations, and they work amazingly well if you know how to use them. And if you listen to somebody that knows what they're talking about, yeah, that stone can be soft, that's great. The matrix that holds the abrasives can be soft. The abrasives that's inbound in it come to the surface, form a slurry. That's what does the work. If you're constantly washing that slurry away, yeah, those stones aren't going to work because you're not using them as designed. That's how a water stone works. If you're trying to use it like you would use an oil stone where you cut for a little bit, you wipe it off, you put more oil, you're using it wrong. And that's where the gentleman I was talking to this morning and I differed, because he was trying to use water stones like oil stones. And I basically, I think I offended him because I think he thought I was calling him an idiot. But I mean, if you're gonna ask somebody a question because you know they have more knowledge about a subject than you do, and then you just simply don't listen to what they're trying to tell you and you argue, then maybe you are an idiot. I'm not gonna call him an idiot, just saying that if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, the likelihood is, ladies and gentlemen, it's probably a duck. So, last thing I would like to say. I just don't have the money to do it right now. I got my Skaha replaced. I am replacing Mr. Aaron Rowe's Best Tech Swordfish. I would plead with you, ladies and gentlemen, to please help me try to replace Mr. Aaron Rowe's Fox Tur that got stolen when our package got ripped into. He really loved that knife. He had never even carried it. He sent it to me for an extended finger choil and sharpening, and had never even gotten to mess with it. It got ripped into. I thought I had gotten that package really, really, really well sealed, and apparently I did not do a good enough job to get it through the New Jersey Postal Service. So I would ask that if you could, let's try and take up a collection. Let's pass the plate to replace his. I mean, I came across a really good deal on a Best Tech Swordfish exactly like his. So I'm trying. It's going to take a while for you to get here because I found it on Mass Drop. So I had to enter the drop. But I think it's the best. I feel really bad. You know, I lost a knife and it got replaced for me, but no one did anything for Aaron, so I really feel bad. So if we can do that, let's try and do that. 15 minutes. We gotta shut this down. So there it is. The Venev Diamond stones, and why that guy was wrong about water stones. So if you're watching that video, sir, I'm not calling you an idiot, just saying you exhibit the signs and symptoms. Just saying. All right, ladies and gentlemen. The ladies love my flowing locks. No, they don't. No, they don't. They hate them. My wife and kid want me to get a haircut so bad. All right, you guys, take it easy. Love you all. Take it easy. See you next time.